Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite comics, favorite individual issues, my favorite romance comic, The Last of a Dying Breed. Yes, the very last mainstream romance comic published, and that is Young Love number 126. I'll get into that in just a minute. But first, just a couple notes. First of all, I'm sorry this is a little bit late. I've tried to publish, twice a week here optimally on Mondays and Thursdays, but I've had a lot of 2020 all over me the last couple of weeks, so it just didn't get done. Chances are you'll probably never even see this video since I'm uploading it on a Saturday, and for some reason those don't even get out to people, so they don't know they exist. But if you're one of the select few, the secret, proud, brotherhood and sisterhood of comics fans who are brought in to the secret society of people that have seen this video, then you're in luck, because today I think it'll be a real corker. The other thing I just want to mention real quick, if you do happen to see this video, is that I've mentioned this before, but the Kickstarter for my comic The Crime Busters is going live on Monday, and so Monday night at 7 o'clock I'm going to be doing a live launch party here on my YouTube channel. You can join me. I'll be talking about my comic, of course, but I'll also be talking about I don't even know what. It's a party, who knows? I'll probably be just drunk on bottled water by the time that comes around, and so I'll be a little sloshy, and I might talk about anything. And anyone who comes in the chat can ask me questions, and we can discuss whatever comes up. So it's just going to be a hangout to celebrate my comic, Crime Busters, launching issue 3 on Kickstarter. So again, that's Monday night. Please join me at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and we'll have some YouTube comic book fun. But enough about that. Today we're talking about this amazing comic. It is Young Love number 126. As you can see, I've got my copy is signed by writer Paul Kupperberg, who did one of the 4 stories in this issue. And this is the last mainstream romance comic. So its cover date is July 1977. And this was the last mainstream romance comic published by any of the big mainstream publishers. So this is the final DC romance. This series had actually been canceled earlier, a year earlier, I think, and they brought it back for a couple issues. So this is the last straggler. All of their other romance titles had been canceled for a couple years at this point, including the flagship romance book, Young Romance. Those are all gone. Marvel had canceled all of their romance books a couple years early as well. They had been doing only reprints for the last 10 or 15 issues of both of those titles. Those are gone. And Charlton in 1976 shut down their line as well. Now, following this, Charlton did revive their line a couple times in 1980, and then again in 1982, I think, 83. They put out some romance books, but they weren't new content. It was just reprints of previous ones, the old Charlton model, where they didn't want to pay anyone, so they thought, well, we've got this library of reprints. So they put out some issues of I Love You around 1980, and then in 82, 83, they tried to capitalize on the soap opera craze at the time by putting out a couple soap opera themed comics. One was a reprint of the Great David and Eileen storyline, but again, those are all reprints. The last romance comic as we know it right here, Young Love 126. And I absolutely love this comic book. Every story in here is crazier than the next. It gets to the point in here where I feel like the writers are just having a little bit of fun with the genre conventions. They're having a hard time taking themselves or the material very seriously. So we veer into self-parody a couple times, and it's just great. So why don't we just dive into it? I just want to mention the cover. It's Win Mortimer, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's classic 1977. We got this is Mavis, who is the lead in the main story here, and she's saying, "My unknown CB radio buddy is finally coming to see me. Will he be the man of my dreams or my nightmares?" So I love this for a couple reasons. Of course, growing up in the 70s, the CB craze is something that had a big place in my memory. in large part because my grandfather was a truck driver who drove the big rigs coast to coast for like 30 years. So we all had CB radios in our different various vehicles at that time. My family, around that time, we got this giant purple Ford like F-150 or whatever it was, a Econoline, like this huge monstrous van. It was purple with like a big mural painted on the side. It's so 1970s. The back seat had been taken out and a bed had been put in place. And we had a CB radio, and our friends, family friends, they all had CB radios. So we would drive around, we'd go on trips together, and we'd just be talking on the CB radio the whole time. So, big I love CB radio themed covers and stories from this period and truck driver covers in general. And then also the other thing about this is it's very much sort of a modern sort of online dating situation here where she's wondering if she's being catfished because she's never actually met the truck driver that she's fallen in love with. So why don't we dive right into that? That's the lead story, and I'm just gonna walk you through these stories because that's just the first of several fantastic stories here. All right, so here we are. It's called CB Romance, and art by Win Mortimer. Win Mortimer is someone who knows how to draw a lovely lady. There's Mavis. Mavis is a waitress at a truck stop, and so here she is, and her special driver was a guy she'd never seen, and her handle is Butterscotch. Breaker 19, this is Butterscotch, sending from the space station. I'm looking for the Silver Shadow. Got your ears on, good buddy? I love this. I love this so much. I've mentioned this before in my previous YouTube videos that I love CB radio stories. This is my childhood right here. It just brings a smile to my face and also cracks me up because it's so goofy. So it's got everything going for it. And here he is. This is Silver Shadow. And they have their little romance. And then the older waitress, Dolly, she's been around. She knows what's going on. And she's like, honey, this is a recipe for disaster. And she keeps trying to talk Mavis out of it. And they finally meet each other and go on a date, and it doesn't go the way she wanted because he just seems distant. And then she's like, this isn't going to work out. He doesn't like me. And then he shows up. And he's like, actually, I do like you. And that's it. Like, very low stakes. She's just like, I don't know, this date's not going great. And he's like, it's a first date. We were nervous. Let's make out. So that's that's not a whole lot of nothing over nothing. But I just love the period. 77 is when we get stuff like Smoking the Bandit, and then 78 was the movie Convoy. So it's so great. Okay, here we go. It's story number 2. It's probably the tamest of it, but with the best romance title, which is I Won't Kiss That Evil Way, written by a young Tom DeFalco, of all people. Art by someone named Jeff Acklin. I don't know who that is. His arms crushed me to him. Savagely his lips met mine. The fury of his passion engulfed me. And she runs off. And basically, this time she's getting bad advice from a friend who is like, she's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I just want love. I don't want to be used for my beautiful lips. And she's like, you've got to put out. Her friend's like, you got to put out, or else he's going to find somewhere else. And then there's like a friendly guy at work who's like, don't give in to his demands. You're too nice. Take it at your own pace. And then basically what happens is the guy wants to make out with her and gets handsy, and she's like, no. And he's like, either put out or get lost. And so she's like, I choose get lost. And so she runs into the good guy, and the good guy's like, gives her a nice goodbye kiss, and she's like, oh yeah. All right, so yeah, I want to show this here. This is by Elizabeth, and she does these very sort of 70s delicate, sort of flowery, um, it's like interstitial pages in a lot of the romance books at the time. This one happens to be for Taurus, and but she does a lot of fashion stuff, and she's actually one of the better known, more memorable artists from this period because she has her own distinct style, which they don't really let into the actual stories very much at DC, but it's really cool. I really dig her work. Here she is with Gemini, and let's just get a close look here. Sorry for the glare and on the jerky movement. It's really cool, and she's giving Gemini like just a bit of a creepy expression. Yeah, I think a really underrated. I don't think she did anything out in comics outside of these sort of fill-in pages in the romance books, but for romance collectors like me, her work is really cool. Okay, so here we go. Probably my favorite story in this. It's Love in Peril. This one has art credits, but no writing credit for some reason. Right? It's weird. Inks by Jim Pinkoski and Tony Pano. Inks by Vince Coletta. No writing credit, which is too bad because I love this story. Basically, there's a girl and she's in love with a race car driver. And this always happens where usually it's the girl who is afraid her boyfriend's going to get killed, but in this case it's the mom. And we find out that the mom doesn't want them to be together because her husband, the father of the daughter, the girl in here, was killed in an experimental plane crash, and she doesn't want her daughter to go through that same horror. So anyway, she decides, the girl's like, we've still got to be together. I don't care what mom says. And she goes to the racetrack, and sure enough, there's an accident, but Betsy accidentally wanders onto the racetrack in the middle of the race, and so the boyfriend almost runs her over, right? And in order to get out of the way, he swerves and he crashes. And so they run over, and the boyfriend's in the car, the trailing car, but they have an accident. And then you see this guy has gotten knocked down, and when he comes to, it's the dad. It turns out he survived the plane crash, but he had amnesia, and when he gets hit in this accident, his memory comes back. And so they piece things together, and then the mother's like, well, it turns out race car driving accidents can actually bring families together. Go ahead. And so it's like a double ceremony where they're both so happy with their significant other. This story cracks me up so hard. I love this so much. Not only that she wanders out onto the racetrack in the middle of the race, but then it turns out the dad is the guy and he's got amnesia. It's just fantastic. Here's a one-page thing called How We Met. This says Paul Kupperberg writing. And then we got a story by Bob Toomey. Art by Bill Drought. Wow, that's digging. That's an old school artist right there, Bill Drought. My boyfriend's best friend was my rival. This is great, and it's another story that hits me where I live because it's a Vietnam story. I should have saved this for my review of the Vietnam stories. But here's a woman slapping this dude, and he's like, what's the issue? So here's the issue. So here's this woman. She's getting advice from her best friend, and she's like, um, "I'm having man troubles because my boyfriend, um, David, is always running off to help his buddy Avery, and they were in Vietnam together. And Avery's got such bad post-traumatic stress that he's always having these meltdowns, and David's always running off to take care of him." And so the best friend listens. It's like maybe you need to be sexier. Maybe you need to, maybe you're just not putting out enough. And she's like, no, that's not it. It's this is Avery friend. And so they're supposed to have dinner with Avery, and she's like, I'm gonna tell that guy off. And then um, when when the boyfriend shows up, he's like, Avery had another meltdown, and he can't make it. And she's like, come on, this jackass is messing everything up, and I've had it. And so the boyfriend's like, but he saved my life in Nam. And she's like, whatever, I don't give a crap. And so he's like, listen, that's my best friend, and he needs me. And he's like, I'm gonna go see him right now. And she's like, it's our anniversary. And he's like, no, Avery needs me. And so she runs into her girlfriend. She's like, wow, my boyfriend is such a tool. And she's like, why don't you just dump him? Dump this guy. He's a jerk. So anyway, she's like, no, I'm not going to dump him. I'm going to go tell Avery off. So she goes to see Avery, right? And she smacks him in the face. And she's like, you're screwing up my relationship because you're so needy with your stupid war trauma. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We haven't even seen each other for like a couple weeks. And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, this is just a dumb thing that David does. He cheats on his girlfriend, then he blames it on me. And so he's like, I've had it. She's like, I've had it. And so the two of them run off to confront David. And it turns out he's actually been cheating on her with the best friend. That's why she was counseling her friend to dump him, is because she's the person. So, they grab the plates of spaghetti and they dump them on their heads, and they're like, F you. And then, because the friend's a photographer, right, the woman grabs her friend's camera and takes photos of it so that they can really rub it in, this most humiliating moment. And then they laugh at them, and in this moment, love is sealed, and they're like, you know what? I like the cut of your jib. You can humiliate a-holes just like I can, and you enjoy it as much as I do. Let's get together! And that's how it ends. Oh, man. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. So, I don't know. Maybe it's not for everyone, but here it is, Young Love 126. And for me, this has got everything going for it. It's got the camp, the over-the-top melodrama, like with the race car driver, the ridiculous action, the humor, and then it's got a lot of, again, this issue in particular has a lot of personal touchstones with me, with the CB radio stuff and the truck driver stuff. And of course, my father was in Vietnam, which is why I have this interest in the Vietnam romance story. So it's got that. So this one pretty much has everything. My favorite romance comic. It's Young Love number 126. So thanks for watching again. Join me on Monday, November 16, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the live launch party. And we're just going to have as much fun as YouTube allows us to. And I'll see you then.